The small town of Willowbrook was a place where everyone knew everyone. Nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, it was the kind of town where life moved slowly and friendships were forged to last a lifetime. Among its residents were two men, Daniel and Rory Ethan, whose bond was the stuff of local legend. Daniel was the kind of person who lit up a room with his presence. He was generous, always ready to lend a hand, and had an infectious laugh that could turn even the worst day around. Ethan, on the other hand, was quieter, more reserved. He admired Daniel deeply, though he rarely admitted it. The two had been inseparable since childhood, their friendship rooted in shared adventures and countless memories. They had grown up together, exploring the woods, building tree houses, and dreaming of the future. Daniel wanted to travel the world, while Ethan dreamed of becoming a successful artist. But as they grew older, life took them down different paths. Daniel's natural charm and charisma made him the center of attention wherever he went, while Ethan struggled to find his place in the world. Despite their differences, their friendship remained strong, or so it seemed. Beneath the surface, Ethan harbored a growing resentment. He couldn't help but compare himself to Daniel, feeling overshadowed and inadequate. But he buried these feelings deep, unwilling to risk the bond they shared. The turning point came when Daniel fell in love with Lila, a beautiful and kind-hearted woman who had recently moved to Willowbrook. Lila was everything Ethan had ever wanted in a partner, intelligent, compassionate, and full of life. But her attention was focused solely on Daniel. Ethan watched as their relationship blossomed, his jealousy growing with each passing day. He tried to convince himself that he was happy for his friend, but the bitterness inside him was impossible to ignore. He began to withdraw, spending more time alone in his studio, pouring his emotions into his art. One evening, at a town gathering, Daniel announced that he and Lila were engaged. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Ethan felt as though the ground had been ripped out from under him. He forced a smile, congratulating Daniel and Lila, but inside, he was seething. That night, Ethan lay awake, his mind racing. He couldn't understand why Daniel seemed to have everything: love, admiration, success, while he had nothing. The resentment he had buried for so long began to surface, consuming his weeks passed, and Ethan's jealousy turned into obsession. He began to plot, his mind fixated on the idea of taking away the one thing Daniel cherished most: his life. One crisp autumn evening, Ethan invited Daniel to join him for a hike in the woods. It was a place they had often visited as children, a spot filled with happy memories. Daniel, ever trusting, agreed without hesitation. As they walked deeper into the forest, Ethan's demeanor shifted. He became quiet, his movements deliberate. Daniel, sensing something was off, tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but Ethan remained silent. Finally, they reached a clearing, a place Ethan had prepared in advance. He turned to Daniel, his eyes cold and unfeeling. Before Daniel could react, Ethan doused him with gasoline and lit a match. The flames erupted instantly, engulfing Daniel in a fiery inferno. His screams echoed through the forest, a sound that would haunt Ethan for the rest of his life. Ethan stood frozen, watching as his friend writhed in agony. When the flames finally died down, all that remained was a charred, lifeless body. Ethan fled the scene, his heart pounding. He told himself he had no other choice, that Daniel had brought this upon himself. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had destroyed the one person who had always been there for him. In the days that followed, Ethan tried to carry on as if nothing had happened. He attended Daniel's funeral, playing the role of the grieving friend. But the guilt was unbearable. He began to see Daniel everywhere, in his dreams, in the shadows of his studio, in the faces of strangers. The sound of Daniel's screams echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of what he had done. The police launched an investigation, but with no witnesses and little evidence, the case quickly grew cold. Ethan was questioned, but he managed to maintain his composure, lying through his teeth. As time passed, Ethan's mental state deteriorated. He became paranoid, convinced that someone was watching him. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and spent hours staring at the blank canvas in his studio, Unable to paint months later, a breakthrough in the investigation brought Ethan's world crashing down. A hiker had discovered Daniel's charred remains in the forest, and forensic evidence pointed to foul play. The police reopened the case, and this time they focused their attention on Ethan. Confronted with the evidence, Ethan's facade crumbled. He confessed to the crime, his voice trembling with guilt and regret. He was arrested, his trial drawing national attention. In the end, Ethan was sentenced to life in prison. As he sat in his cell, he reflected on the choices that had led him to this point. He had destroyed not only Daniel's life, but also his own. But for Ethan, the punishment was not enough. The guilt continued to eat away at him, driving him to the brink of madness. In his final moments, he saw Daniel's face, smiling as he had in life. And as the darkness closed in, Ethan realized that some sins could never be forgiven. This story is a powerful exploration of friendship, jealousy, and the consequences of betrayal. Let me know if you'd like to adjust or expand any part of it.